Hey all, this is Professor K.S. Ashok Kumar from KIT Kalaignar Karunanidhi Institute of Technology from Department of Management Studies, one of the few departments accredited with NAC and NBA. So today we are going to see on demand forecasting in operations management. So before going into what demand forecasting is, why it is essential for specifically operations and production management. So, in operations management, managers have to predefinedly find out what requirements they need to product or to produce the products or services. So, in order to find out what they require exactly, they need to forecast the demand. So, based on the demand only, they can produce products. In case, for example, if you keep there is no demand at all, or there is no demand forecasting at all in your organization, whatever you produce, it is not 100% sure that whatever you have produced will be sold or it would be taken to the retailers or wholesalers. So it would be a loss for the organization. So in order to make sure that you don't go into a loss, most of the managers go for demand forecasting. So forecasting your demand, what is what is the exact demand in the market, whether my product is going well or not, what type of products are going well. For example, if I am a big manufacturer with wide variety of products, I need to exactly find out which product is moving very fast, which product is moving averagely, and which product is moving too fast. So accordingly, you can produce the products in an order and you can deliver it in the market. So this is why demand forecasting is done before actually the production starts. So generally, demand forecasting is purely done in order to reduce the losses for the organization and to make sure that the product, whichever is reaching the end consumer, not only the customer but the end consumer, is fresh and new. Because in some cases there were a lot of complaints in earlier stages where this demand forecasting was not done for each and every product. There were a lot of complaints stating that the products are old, it was produced in a farther stage and it is not up to the mark, there are quality issues. So there are a lot of issues because of these where the products were not demand forecast, which means if you would have demand forecast the products and if you would have produced it, it would automatically directly reach the consumer without stored in a warehouse or in the retailer's place, etc., etc. So that's why purely demand forecasting is mandatory in production and operations management. So in case of production, demand forecasting is process of estimating the quantity of a product or service that consumers will purchase. For example, I will do a demand forecasting a previous week. If I want to start the production this week, I would have done the demand forecasting in the previous week, and I would have let known my team that this is what the demand is. So for example, I would have done a demand for a toothpaste, which means it is a consumable product, toothpaste. I would have done a demand forecasting for the last week, and I would have come to a conclusion that I require 1 lakh units. I require 1.5 lakh units. So this is how a demand would be forecast. Based on that forecasted demand, I will give my team the objective. So you have to produce 1.5 lakh units of toothpaste. So this is how demand would be forecasted. So without forecasting demand, without knowing the exact quantity, it is very difficult to produce a product. If you end producing the product also, it may not end up in the consumer's hand. It may be there lying in your warehouse. So for that primary reason, demand forecasting is very, very essential. So why demand forecasting? It helps the company to make decisions on whether to enter a new market and also to match supply with demand. So the primary objective of demand forecasting is to match the supply with demand. Whether your supply is less or your demand is less, if anything is uneven, the demand forecasting will not be a proper thing, and in the market the consumers will be dissatisfied. So in order to match the supply and demand, you are exactly doing demand forecasting. In good days, your demand would be high. In bad days, your demand would be low. So accordingly, you can produce products. It is not mandatory that if I'm producing 1,000 units today, you need not to have the same target tomorrow or day after tomorrow. Tomorrow, there may be a huge demand, so you need to produce 5,000 units. Day after tomorrow, you might have only 500 units as demand, so you need only to produce 500 units. So if you predict the demand well in advance, your losses will be reduced, or else you will incur high losses. So that is the main reason for demand forecasting, to match your supply with the demand. Next one, the forecast uses both qualitative and quantitative methods. So here qualitative methods are purely attributor methods, which will use old data to compare your current scenario. So those are called as qualitative data. Quantitative data are purely numbered data. So you freshly take the numbers, you calculate it, and you compare it with your previous years or previous months calculation, and you come to a conclusion that this is what your demand forecasting would be. So with respect to demand forecasting, it is not 100% sure that the 100 units of products would be sold or 1,000 units of product would be sold. It is a approximate idea of how the demand would be forecasted. For example, you cannot exactly predict 1,000 units, 1,500 units, 1 lakh units, or 2 lakh units. It's a roundical figure. It may be plus or minus. So that is why we are forecasting demand, and we use two techniques, qualitative techniques as well as quantitative techniques. Why demand forecasting? Why do organizations go for demand forecasting before going for producing the product or any kind of service? One is for planning and scheduling production. So without demand forecasting, you cannot plan and schedule a production, because a production is a very vast area. You require to have finalize your raw materials, how much number of machines to be done, how much number of employees to be employed. So it is a kind of a tedious process which you have to plan earlier before producing the product. So in order to plan that, you require demand forecasting. Second one, acquiring inputs. So in the current scenario, where after this COVID, the raw material prices have jumped up, it has shooten up like anything. You cannot purchase raw materials and keep it in your organization for a very long period, because the cost of raw materials are increasing. So if you know what the exact demand is, accordingly you can purchase your raw materials. So that is input. So not only inputs, so the tools, machines required, everything can be calculated accordingly, according to the demand what you have predicted. Third one, making provisions for the finances. The very important thing, budget. So you cannot just away throw it like I need 1 lakh rupees or 2 lakh rupees or 1 crore rupees or 2 crore rupees. You cannot just put money on anything without forecasting. So you should know exactly what is your demand. This is the number of unit I'm going to produce. This is the exact number of raw materials I require. This is the total number of machines which I'm going to run. This is the number of employees I'm going to employ to produce these much number of products. So all these combined together gives you an exact budget of how much is required to produce the product. Next one, formulating a pricing strategy. So as said, pricing is purely done based on the demand. 90% of the time, based on the demand, the pricing may vary. Sometimes if your demand is low, you tend to reduce your prices. If the demand is very high, you tend to increase your prices. So your pricing strategy purely is based on your demand forecasting. So accordingly, you can buy the raw materials. So if your demand is high and you require high number of raw materials, the supplier will be asking for a higher rate. So in order to meet up your demand, you have to pay higher rate, and you have to put that raw materials into the production, and you have to give the product. Entirely that pricing strategy, you have to put that extra amount with your pricing. So all those things, formulating this pricing strategy is directly depend upon your demand forecasting. Next one, planning advertisement. So when should I plan for advertisement? When my product's demand is very less, I have to go for an advertisement. It is not I'm not saying that if your demand is very high, you should not go for advertising. Generally, organizations try to do advertisements only when the demand is low, because advertisement cost shoots up. If you want to give it in any print media or television media, in recent times, all social media networkings have come. So if you want to advertise on all the platforms, you require large sums of money. So organizations would be hesitant. If their demand is very good, they will be hesitant in promoting that product, because it is already in high demand. So what is the necessity for me to advertise? So when your demand drops, or if your competitor is moving well, or if your competitor product is moving well and they are ahead in competition, now you would tend to go for advertisement. So accordingly, you can plan advertisement, whether I require frequent advertisements or I require only a phased advertisement manner, or whether I have to go for advertisement in print media or electronic media or all other social media platform. It purely all depends upon demand forecasting. So based on only one demand forecasting, all other things are varying. So planning, scheduling production, acquiring your inputs and raw materials, making provisions for your finances or budgeting, formulating pricing strategy, and even planning your advertisement, everything is purely dependent upon your demand forecasting. So whatever demand forecasting you are doing, it should be well and proper. So what are the steps in demand forecasting, or how you forecast your demand? So there are generally 5 steps, common 5 steps, which is used universally. First one, specifying the objective. Specifying the objective in the sense, what are or which product you are going to demand forecast for. So you might have n number of products in your organization. You might be having product 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So specifically, you have to mention which product you're demand forecasting for. So it may be product 1, it may be product 5, etc., etc. You have to clearly specify which product you are demand forecasting for. Second one, determining the time perspective. So demand forecasting is primarily or directly determined in the time perspective, which means you cannot take a very longer period for demand forecasting. It have to be predicted very fast, because you are in a market where competitors is also moving fast. So if you take too much long time to predict your demand, after prediction of your demand and then starting your production and then going and giving it in the market, now if it is taking very long period, your competitor may just pass you, and they may be gaining your market share. So in order to do that, your demand forecasting should be very, very fast, and it should be in a precisely timely manner. For example, it may take 1 day, 1 week, 2 days, 3 days. It depends upon the product what you are demand forecasting for. So time is very, very important in case of demand forecasting. If you take very longer period of time, your competitor will jump in and they take over the market share. Third one, making choice of the method. As I said, there are 2 types of methods. One is qualitative methods and quantitative methods, which we are going to see in the next slide. So you have to choose your method wisely. It is not mandatory, or it is not written anywhere that you have to use this method or that method. It is up to the organization and their budget to use any of the methods, either qualitative method or quantitative method. It is purely up to the organization, and nobody is going to dictate you have to only use this one or that one. So making choice of the method is the prerogative of the organization, and they have to wisely choose which method they are going for. Next one, collection of data. Now, in which way you are going to collect the data? The collection of data plays a very important role. If you make mistakes in collecting the data, or if it is improper, the whatever results you obtain will directly impact your production and your sales. So that's why collection of data should be accurate. Whatever data you are collecting, it should be translated into the findings or results. So you should not put in order to satisfy your manager, in order to satisfy your top management. Nobody should alter the collected data. Whatever data has been collected, you just compile that data and come to a conclusion. And the last one, estimation and interpretation of the results. So once the data has been collected, you have to interpret the data. What the data we have collected, and how much respondents were there. Out of this respondents, what is their demand? So coming to a conclusion that what number of products I would sell in the forthcoming months or forthcoming days. So this is how a demand would be forecasted. This is the universal method of doing demand forecasting. Not only in production management or operation management, wherever you do demand forecasting, these are all the common 5 steps. First, you have to specify the objective clearly, determine the time perspective. You have to clearly mention the time before going into a demand forecasting. If I'm going to do a demand forecasting, I have to fix a time and then I have to go for demand forecasting. Third one, making choice of a method. So as I said, there are 2 types of method. One is qualitative method, the other one is quantitative method. You have to exactly choose, because this is the prerogative of the organization. They have the freedom to choose whatever method they want. So choosing of the method and collecting the data without any mistakes and without any alteration. You have to collect the data, and you have to interpret the data, and you have to tell out the results like this is what the demand is or this is what the demand will look like. So these are all the 5 steps in demand forecasting. As I said in the demand forecasting steps, there are choose of method. What method I have to choose? So there are generally 2 types of method. One is qualitative method, the other one is quantitative techniques. So qualitative methods have 3 techniques. One is expert opinion or Delphi method, survey method, or market experimentation or test marketing method. So coming to your qualitative, expert opinion is one of the oldest methods in demand forecasting, where you go to an expert, a person who has relevant experience in forecasting the demand. You go give your data to them and ask them what would be your demand like. So it is purely the jury's expert opinion. The expert may be a single person or a group of persons who will be analyzing your given data. You would be giving a data like this is my product. Last month I have sold this much number of products. Last year I have sold this much number of products. Kindly predict the demand for my product for the next month and the forthcoming month. Now, the expert will analyze the data, whatever you have given, and based on their experience, because they are experts, they might have experience more than 15 years or 20 years. Based on their experiences, they will give you a demand, kindly produce this much numbers or this much numbers. So taking up that numbers is purely organization's intentiveness, whether they want to take the expert opinions view or they want to go into some other techniques. It is purely up to the organization. So expert opinion is simply going to an expert who has very good expertise in demand forecasting, giving all your data. They will predict what is happening, or they will see what are all the things were there, and they will predict your demand for you. That is expert opinion method, or we also call it as Delphi method. Next one, survey. So this is the commonly used method in all mediums. So survey method is nothing but creating a questionnaire, taking the questionnaire to your consumers, asking them certain questions, excuse me, asking them certain questions and finding out what data they require. Excuse me. So you will go to a market, you will find consumers, you will ask them what are all the requirements. Excuse me. Accordingly, you collect the data from them, you do all those calculations, and finally you will come to a conclusion that what number of data or what number of, so it will be exactly known what the consumers are requiring. So this is generally the survey method. And the third method in your qualitative analysis is market experimentation. What is market experimentation? Just trying out or giving free samples of your products to the consumers, asking them to try it out and to see whether this product will be accepted in the market or not. So generally all these are old age experiments which is been implemented by organization to find out their demand, whether the product will be in demand or not in demand. If the product is in demand, how much number of products or services I need to produce or develop. All these are based on these analysis, qualitative analysis, which is expert opinion or Delphi method, survey method, and market experimentation or test marketing. So this is purely a qualitative technique. The results obtained from this qualitative techniques is not 100% accurate. So it may be a plus 10% high or plus 10% low. So based on it, organizations can go for it. Or if they do have still doubts in the qualitative analysis, they can even go for quantitative analysis. Now coming to quantitative analysis, there are 3 analysis, that is time series analysis and barometric analysis, which will tell you what exact demand for your product is. So first one, in quantitative method, time series analysis is one of the most common quantitative method used to predict future demand of the product. So what is time series analysis? So you are running along with time. So along with time, you require these type of analysis. One is trend analysis, another one is seasonal variations, another cyclical variations, and random fluctuations. So all 4 these culminated together forms your time series analysis. What is trend? You are finding out what is the trend of your product, whether it is matching your trend, whether the predict the future of the sales firm is long-term increase or decrease in variable, whether your product will increase drastically or your demand will come down drastically. Everything is in a trend. It will show normal trend analysis. The trend graph will show whether your product graph is going high or coming down. Second one, seasonal variations, sir. So in case if your product is a seasonal product, it will 100% depend upon what season you are going to produce in. If you are in a peak season time, your demand will shoot up. If you are in on and off season, automatically your demand for your product will come down. Example, the sale of cotton dresses increases in summer as well as the woolen clothes increases in winter. So it depends upon your season, your product is also increasing. And third one is cyclical variation. So cyclical variations in demand due to fluctuations in business cycle. For example, recession or any other political unrest. All these kind of examples will make your business environment unstable. If your business is unstable, you cannot exactly predict your demand. You cannot exactly tell. You may have good product, you may be in good condition, but unfortunately the business environment, the political environment will not be suitable to sell your product. So those are all called as cyclical variation. And last one is random fluctuations. It happens purely because of natural calamities. In the last 2 years, that is 2020 and 2021, demand forecasting was very difficult for most of the organization because nobody was going out. The market was closed. Everybody was in-house. COVID was affecting like anything. We had COVID 1, wave 2, wave 3, and nobody knows when the COVID will stop, when the market will open up. During those kind of natural calamities, nobody knows how to predict the demand. So these are all certain time series analysis, how you predict the demand. One is trend analysis, other one is seasonal variation, third one is cyclical variation, and the fourth one is random fluctuations. And this is the first one of your quantitative techniques. Second one, barometric analysis. So barometric analysis is another way of predicting your demand forecasting with the quantitative analysis. What is barometric analysis? It is the prediction of turning points in one economic time series through the use of observations on another time series called as barometer or indicator. So you will exactly take the economic condition of today and the past. For example, in February, the economic condition was in such a manner. So during February 2021 or February 2020, what the economic condition was. So purely taking into the economic time series into consideration and you calculating the demand, that is called as barometric analysis. In barometric analysis, you have three different types of indicators: leading indicators, coincident indicators, and lagging indicators. So not going too deep into what these three are. Leading indicators, coincident, and lagging indicators will exactly tell you whether the economic condition or the economic situation has improved or gone worse or in an average state. So whether the people are ready to buy, whether the economic condition is feasible for me to launch new products or to launch my existing product or to produce more in number. All these will be told by your leading, lagging, and coincident indicators. So this is how a demand would be forecasted for your product. One is demand forecasting is very, very essential for producing your products. Without demand forecasting, nothing will move up in the production line. In case of demand forecasting, you have two methods. One is qualitative method, other one is quantitative method. Qualitative methods, you have three different types of techniques. One is your Delphi method or expert opinion method, survey method, and your test marketing method. Whereas in quantitative analysis, you have two different types of analysis. One is time series analysis, the other one is barometric analysis. Time series analysis clearly tells what is your trend, what are the seasonal variations, what are the cyclical variations, and what are your random fluctuations. Barometric analysis is purely the prediction of turning points of economic time series from one point in time in and another point in time. For example, in the month of 2022 January, what is the economic time series was, and the same in January 2021, what was the economic condition was. Comparing these two, coming to a conclusion whether it is a lagging indicator or it is a leading indicator or it is a neutral coincident indicator. Accordingly, you can produce the number of products. So this is how a demand is forecasted. Even now I'm telling, in any cases, even if it is an advanced era of technology, advanced era of information management, whatever it is, proper demand forecasting will lead to profits. And if the demand forecasting is not proper, even though you may be a very bigger organization, you may be a market leader, it will give you a loss for the organization. So this is a hint and a few just topics about demand forecasting. Hope you enjoyed the topics. Any doubts, you can always feel free to ask me. Thank you once again. See you. Bye.